Welcome back to the John Patrick channel where we talk about politics, leadership, and governance. On the last episode, I told you I was in OAU. Presently, I'm in last Lagos State University, and on today's episode, I have another amazing person whose knowledge you will see when he begins to talk. Yeah, see when he begins to talk, not just hear it. You will see it in his actions. You see it come alive. His knowledge will come alive. So I have here with me. I'll allow him introduce. I love my guests introducing themselves, so I'll let him introduce himself.
Okay, I'm not somebody who likes this is like flamboyant introduction. Yeah, so my name is Adeyemi. Yeah, I'm an actor, poet, writer, what else? Journalist. Yeah,
Pan-African.
Pan-African. Yeah, Pan-African.
That's the major reason he is here, because he's Pan-Africanist. I want to understand what Pan-Africanism is, and that is why we have this video. And up until now, I did not have a title for this video, but I think that is the title. What is Pan-Africanism? So I think we start from there. We can't understand what Pan-Africanism is until we know what Africa is in the first place. So I think let's start from there. What is Africa?
In my opinion, I feel Africa is a very deep phenomenon, not just geographical location. Africa is not just the geographical location, but the phenomenon and ideology in itself.
Okay.
Africa is the continent of black people all over the world and people of African descent. Yeah. Okay. It's a geographical location, but at the same time, Africa has spanned into a political ideology. Yeah. So when I think about Africa, I think about my ancestors. I think about a struggle that is way deeper than one's thoughts. Yeah. So yeah, Africa means quite a number of things. Yeah, but I'll choose to go for the territorial or geographical and ideological definition of Africa. Yeah. Okay. So Africa is where I was born.
Yeah.
And like Osadefo Komenkuma used to say, I'm not an African because I was born in Africa. I am an African because Africa is born in me.
Oh, what's the difference?
The difference is that one can be born in Africa, but refuse to represent the spiritual, philosophical, economical, political and ideological essence of what being an African is.
Okay.
And one might not be born in Africa and we represent the full embodiment of all that. Yeah. So I can have a Malcolm X who was never born in Africa, didn't really step his foot upon the African continent, I think, except once in his life. Wow. Yeah, and he can be more African than an African who was born in Osun State and lived in Africa all his life.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There is. Whenever we talk about Africa, there's always this word struggle that comes with it. What's the relationship between Africa and struggle?
I think this question is very important because one must understand the essence of life as a human being. Yeah. We use the word struggle because contradiction is the ruling principle of the universe.
Okay.
In everything that has to do with phenomenon, there is positive, negative. So there is always this constant struggle between, I don't use the word struggle again. There's always this constant conflict between positive and negative in all of phenomenon.
Okay.
So let's take for example the trees. When you see a tree, the tree grows up. So there is this struggle between the positive and the negative in the tree. That's why it's called growth.
Yeah.
I change all the time. Everything changes all the time. I change 1 million times as I'm seated here because of the constant struggle between positive and negative in my own body.
Yeah.
You change all the time. This chair or brick that we're seated upon changes all the time because of the constant struggle between or conflict, like you want to say, between negative and positive in it. So yeah, it either becomes stronger or decomposes. Yeah. So the logical extension of this whole thing is that it affects all of phenomenon, including life itself. So it is this constant struggle between positive and negative that gives motion to matter and gives matter the ability to move, including history. So as African people, we are in an evolutionary process. Hence, we are in a constant struggle to head towards civilization.
To head towards civilization. To head towards civilization. That means that civilization cannot be attained in its whole entirety.
Except there is this struggle between positive and negative.
Unless that struggle ends.
Except there is this, should I say, the continuous progression of the phenomenon.
How do you mean?
How I mean is, let's say, in Africa or in every continent, a continent moves from a man and a woman to a family, a family to a clan, a clan to a tribe to a state, a state to a nation to a continent. So everybody is on this evolutionary process. So the struggle is for this evolutionary process to continue, for us to get continental unification. So until there is that, and there is the political representation, economic representation, the philosophical representation of this phenomenon, you get. So let's take for example slave trade. Slavery exists in every evolutionary process.
From time immemorial.
Exactly. So if we check the African, within the African context, there's only slavery. Because what I mean by slavery, I mean a conflict that exists
between one and the other.
Yes, exactly. So this conflict is natural. You get what I'm trying to say? So hence, one cannot evolve into a higher civilization if there is no struggle between positive and negative.
So if slavery, for example, is a human thing, and it has been from time immemorial, why is it that the slavery that Africa went through looks so significant that we are yet to recover from it?
Because if you observe, when I was talking the other time, I used the word evolution. Evolutionary process. Meaning the evolutionary process is natural. Let's take for example in a family. There's always conflict in the family. But that does not mean they are there to
part ways.
Exactly, they are there to kill themselves. They might be killing in the long run. But the essence of the family is not the extermination of the family. Meaning brothers, we could be brothers and we have conflict. We could be sisters and we have conflict. We could be brothers and sisters and we have conflict. We could be family members and we have conflict. But the conflict is not for the demise of the family. It is for a continuous evolutionary process.
For progress.
Yes, for progress. Now, so the difference is that what happened to Africa was an interruption
of our evolutionary process.
Because it came from an outside force.
So does that mean that all evolutionary process should come from within?
Yes.
If it always comes from within, how do we now compare our growth in that sense? Because if you are going to measure your growth on what basis will you measure the growth? If there's no comparison between you and another, then you can't, like an African proverb says that if you do not go to another person's farm, you will think your father's farm is the biggest. So if we do not have that, it looks like we wouldn't have known what we could have become.
Mm,
Do you think that is a right thing to say?
it could be if it's in the sense of international relation, meaning um, both of us are engaging in a relationship or a partnership,
Okay.
or I'm using your maybe I'm going into your land to see how your things are done for the purpose of developing my land.
Okay.
You get?
Yeah.
What happened to Africa? It's not that.
So what happened to Africa is not me coming. Let's assume I'm Africa and you are the West, for example. So you are supposed to come to Africa to see how Africa is doing and use it as a template to make yours better. But you came to Africa to not just see what we are doing, but destroy what we are doing to
To
make
build
yours
yours.
better.
So it's an interruption.
Wow.
So there is like so it is not it is a distortion of my evolutionary process. The Europeans used to say that um, they came to bring Africa into civilization, but I don't think that's true. I think they brought Africa out of civilization.
Okay. They brought Africa out of civilization.
Yes.
So we had our own civilization.
Yeah.
Wow. Let's cut it there on the basis of Africa. Let's narrow it down to Nigeria. We have talked about what Africa is. What is Nigeria? At what time did the history of Nigeria start? Or at what time was Nigeria created? So I think when it was created, now it determines what it is.
Yeah.
Do you understand? So what is Nigeria?
Okay. I like doing what is called dialectics. I believe that um, power begins from power begins from the level of conceptualization of an idea. Meaning, when you have a concept,
Yeah.
when you have an idea, power really is um, what this idea means, or what, or the definition that your mind gives it.
Okay.
So when you see a thing, or when you see a phenomenon, or when you see anything that you can see in the world, um, what that thing really is from the original idea where it from the mind where it is conceived.
Okay.
Okay, whenever I'm in Nigeria, you cannot talk about Nigeria without the Berlin Conference,
Of course.
where we had European powers, the Ottoman Empire, Russia, the United States of America. We had England and the likes. They all came together in Berlin to divide Africa like a piece of cake at the back of Africa. And no
Without
African was
without
there.
without Africans present.
Yeah. And they created states. And these states were created not in respect to African history or border. So they created states based on the availability of the resources that are needed for the development of Europe and the diaspora.
Okay.
You get?
Yeah.
So they divided the lands. Let me give an example. We have Togoland. Togoland was divided into the English Togoland and French Togoland.
Yeah.
You get? These are Togolese people.
Yeah.
And these people were divided. So you mean, let's say I'm Togolese, you are Togolese. Both of us meet. We're supposed to be speaking the same language.
Of course.
You get
But
what I'm
we're
saying?
divided and given different languages.
So you're giving French,
And you
I'm giving English. So when I speak, you don't
understand.
I'm Yoruba. And we have various shades of Yoruba people all over the world.
Yeah.
We have Lukumi, that's the ones in the Caribbean. We have Yoruba people in Nigeria, Osun State, Kwara, Ogun, Ondo, Ekiti. So in essence, like a very large part of Kogi and the likes, moving down to Edo State.
Yeah.
Then you see people who are from
Benin.
Benin, Togo, this is Togoland, we have Ewe people and the likes. And they tell you can literally hear this person speaking Yoruba. And they say, no, that's not your brother. That's Togolese, man.
Because someone somewhere divided us and decided that this person should be partitioned into this and this. And that in itself,
based on the interest of European elevation to bring about to feed the need of Europe. That's the underlying factor.
And that's the idea behind the creation of Nigeria.
Yeah. So Nigeria was created on this base. So this borderline, you see these 54 borderlines, artificial borderlines, man. You get, and they protect these borderlines in their life.
Of course. Of course.
You get, so they protect this borderline. So when you ask me what Nigeria is, I see something beyond the imagination of the African.
Beyond the imagination of the African.
Yeah. Meaning that it was not in the original African idea
for a country of such to be created.
Yes.
Okay.
Initially, I'm talking of the historical implication of. We are talking historically now.
So what were we before the creation of Nigeria?
A lot of things. Igbo, Yoruba, we had empires, Oyo Empire, a lot of these empires. But the thing is, we were moving towards an evolutionary process for continental unification.
At the time?
Yeah.
Okay.
So slavery interrupted this evolutionary process.
And to the best of my knowledge, there were already economic relations between Africans before the partitioning and everything with this same European.
It depends on where you are dating history back to.
Okay.
Depends on where you are dating history back to. Yeah, it depends on where you are dating history back to. We had the Afro-Asian trade, yeah. We had like trade with a lot of people. So, but the purpose of trade is for international relations and me getting to know you better for my development and for your development. It's not this parasitic relationship that we have today, where somebody's giving you 10, you must do this. And I'm giving you a 10 that you don't understand. Yeah. Okay, I will provide you this military, this thing for you to get me your oil, man. Yeah, so
okay. We now understand what Africa is. We now understand what Nigeria is. Historically.
Yeah.
So what is it? What's Nigeria today and what's Africa today? So if we've understood what Africa is historically. So in our present day, what is Africa and what is Nigeria?
I see Africa as the historical responsibility of every black man all over the world. Presently. Yeah. Because until Africa is free, no African anywhere on the face of the earth will be free. When I mean African, I mean both black Americans, Afro-Brazilians, English, black people, wherever you are as an African person, as a black man, Africa is your historical responsibility. Because if Africa is not, the China man was not respected anywhere he was on the face of the earth until China was free by Chairman Mao Zedong.
Okay. Yeah.
The French man is not respected anywhere he is all over the face of the earth until the French Revolution took place. Same as every other race. So Africa today is the historical responsibility of African wherever it is on the face of the earth. Permit me to use the word African for the black man because that is what it is.
Well, I do not like to refer to Africans as black. I do not. I have friends who usually argue that I do tell them I'm not black. I hate referring to Africans as black, but you use that in your statement. So
I use that in my statement because of the context of the conversation. I prefer also like using African say instead of black, but for the sake of people who might not really understand, I may think okay when I say African, I mean just people in the African continent.
okay.
So I use that like ideologically, like interchangeably. But when I'm to address all black people in quotes all over the world, I say African.
So my next question is: do you think Pan-Africanism is working for Africa?
Currently, no, because I don't think there are enough Africans who believe in the ideology.
Why? There should be a reason they do not believe in it. Is it the case that they understand it and they do not believe in it, so they are not working towards it, or they do not know that there's something called Pan-Africanism, or there's something they should pursue to achieve Pan-Africanism, or what? Why do you think that is?
I think that is because of indoctrination. See, when you want to enslave the people, one of the very first distortion you can do to a people is in education. What we have in Africa today is not education, it's indoctrination.
What's the difference?
The difference is that education is for the elevation of the society.
Aren't we being elevated?
No, we are being indoctrinated to become slave of the wage.
So we are still slaves.
Yes, we are slaves to the wage. We are being taken into the service industry.
Okay.
Where everybody wants to be a servant instead of pushing towards building higher civilizations. See, the psyche of the African man going to school is not to build Africa.
Okay.
The psyche, permit me, the psyche of the African man going to school is to make money.
That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like everyone should pursue.
Yeah.
Because without money, there's almost nothing you can do.
Okay. When we talk about the concept of money, we must understand globalization, we must understand what the market is really about. Okay, if we talk about money, how strong is the African currency against the European? Against the, you get what I'm saying? What is the base of comparison? What is the base of your trade? If you still trace down this trade, you find out that this trade can only be traced down to European exploitation. And we've been indoctrinated into this system where, okay, we talk about this system itself, but the first commodity in this system is the African. The first commodity that this system ever had was the black man. And the thing is, they've given us this illusion that the black man's position has changed from being good into entrepreneurship, into being producers of wealth, whereas the wealth is illusionary.
Well, it looks like we are rich.
No, we are not. Because you cannot explain to me how that the richest continent in the world has the poorest people. And nobody's challenging that, man.
It's because the people believe that they are rich.
That's the thing, illusion.
So who casts that illusion on us?
It's an educational illusion. It's an indoctrinational illusion.
Okay.
See, when you want to enslave the people, one of the biggest ways to enslave the people is by taking over their education. And they did that to us successfully. In my secondary school,
Yeah.
you get, my second, which is the experience of most Nigerians. I guess you have experienced the same thing too, where you are not allowed to
Speak your language.
yeah, they say it's native language, vernacular.
Yeah.
So when you speak your language, you're beaten in class. You must
Yeah.
speak white language,
Speak English.
You must speak English. Then when you now speak something that is like English, they flog you
Flog you
again.
again.
How dare you speak pidgin, man? No more they will speak Yoruba. How do you speak your English, man? How do you speak your native tongue? In school, your ass. With this God, they flog you, they discipline
So
you.
that was where it started. So what you are trying to say is that the illusion started from even before we got to know that there's an illusion. So we were trained from being kids to understand the system that is an illusion. So by that we do not even know what the right thing should be. So how do we now change the narrative?
Changing the narrative has to do with first and foremost understanding that the school system cannot educate you into consciousness.
Into consciousness. Consciousness of what?
Consciousness of the system and of your responsibility towards societal elevation or continental elevation as the case may be.
We all know that we can't get the right knowledge from schools. So where do we go to get the right knowledge? We need to now free ourselves from this illusion that you have talked about. How then, or where do we go to get the right knowledge for us to now start becoming Pan-African?
I think that it's a result of constant political education.
Okay.
First of all, we need to understand that there is a problem, that we have a problem as motherland people of this world. Then, in admitting that there is a problem, we have to now look for the quest. Okay. The professional of Africa has a responsibility to educate. What do I mean? The professionals have gone to their schools. They've experienced the bad lecturers, the examinations, malpractice. They've experienced the depth of this system, so they know that there is a problem. So it is now a choice for them to either educate the masses of the people about the injustices and this illusion that exists in this system, or they to choose to indoctrinate into this, or to would I call it indoctrination? No, I will call it for them to assimilate into the system.
Now, if these professionals or professors got educated with the education of the illusion, then how can we trust the new education that they will give to us?
I don't think they would be truthful if they continue in the education of their oppressor, because the contradictions are blatant. The contradictions might not be totally visible, but in understanding the minorities of this system, one will come to the conclusion of its ambiguity. What do I mean? What I mean is, if one can see the contradictions in the system, which is blatant, they would come to the exact conclusion of those same things in the logical extension, meaning lecturers are lying to students and raping students. The moment I begin to analyze these things, I will come to the conclusion of what students should do in the face of those things. So their job is the position of education. They know the contradictions. They can see the contradictions, but they might not be conscious enough to give you logical analysis for the kind of consciousness that we are talking about. But I'm saying that from the minorities of these things that are visible, one will come to the same conclusion. What their job is to spark the consciousness, the same as the students of the people. So in sparking the consciousness, the people, because the people are not dumb, the people will come to the same logical analysis. But the thing is, most of the part of our history, our professionals, because of comfort and money, have assimilated instead of questioning and educating the masses of our people. So they become professional dogs, Rottweilers for this.
That reminds me, when I was in school, I had a lecturer. I won't call his name out. The name has to do with, its name sounds like one of these drinks, Coca-Cola. So whoever, my classmates, when I mentioned that name, we will remember his name. When he was pronounced Coca-Cola, his name sounds like that. He took us American literature, and on the day of the introduction, at the beginning of the semester, there's always the introduction of the course, and he said that he came into the class and he said that he told us the course I'm about to teach you is American literature, is the history of American literature, and the Americans themselves no longer study this history.
So why are you giving it to us as African people?
So at that point I was like, why should I study the history of a particular country that even the country do not study it any longer? So that in itself shows what you are saying, that they know what is right, but they can't teach it. And that says a lot, because they're just doing it for the wage. They are slaves to the wage. So they are doing it just to earn, not to make Africa better, not to make their immediate community better. I was telling someone a few days ago that if truly education is the key to development, then Nigeria and Africa should be more developed than it is. Sadly, our curriculum are outdated. One, two, we have solutions to our problems already that are being imported on a daily basis. Our solutions are being imported. So that in itself cannot give room for innovations. It can't give room for us to solve our problems ourselves. So I don't want to start going through all of our Nigerian leaders and African leaders. You see that they all have roots from outside. Even our present president, he has roots from outside. So that means that most of the problems or most of the innovations or solutions that we have are from outside the country. And for us to solve that problem, we need to find out ways whereby we educate ourselves, educate Africans, educate Nigerians on what it means to be Nigerian and African. That's why we have this podcast or this interview. So my next question is, you are a big fan of Obafela. If he were alive today, what would he do?
The question you're asking me, I don't know.
If he was alive today in this present Nigeria, because his songs at the time when he was singing them, they were tackling problems that were at the time. But now, between that time and now, the percentage of that problem has increased by more than 1,000 times. Do you understand?
Yeah.
In his time, they were buying cars for 500, 1,000 naira, 2,000, 3,000 naira for a car. Do you understand? Now cars are in millions. Let's even say worst of, they're buying cars in hundreds of thousands. Now they are in millions of naira. I was saying on my last episode that a lecturer of mine told me that when he was a student, on a undergraduate, he once hosted his wife, who was his girlfriend at the time, with 30 naira, and they had change. Now you can't even buy a sachet of water for 30 naira. Do you understand? So if he were to be alive, with the way he complained bitterly of the problems then, what will he do now?
First and foremost, I'm not a fan of this.
Okay.
Because if my father was a woman,
Mm-hmm.
she would have been my mother.
Okay.
But unfortunately,
Your father is your father. He's a male.
and Ifto is a very close friend of mine, and Ifto lies a lot.
Okay.
Everything Ifto says is a lie.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying? So I'm not a fan of tips and all that. But I understand your question. I don't know what Fela would have done because I'm not Fela and I'm not in the thought process and all that. But one thing I want to make mention of is that the central theme of Fela's songs, his teachings, his ideas, his what have you, is Pan-Africanism, the total liberation and unification of Africa. You must understand that. That is the central theme of Fela's ideas. So most of the times when people talk about Fela, they make Fela seem like one very monstrous guy who just hated all the government officials and would be like, oh, this government official is a this, is a that. And nah, the central point of Fela's theme is that Africa should unite into one government. One must understand that. And the liberation of Africa as of the ideas of Thomas Sankara and Osadifo Kwame Nkrumah. So this is the central thing. Fela sang a lot of songs on this, music against second slavery, where he was singing, now we want to move forward, Africa we unite, African unity. There are a lot of his interviews where he was like, he feels that how the Africa must unite, must be education of the African people. So this is the central idea of Fela Anikulapo Kuti's beliefs and his philosophy. So if Nigeria is to progress into a society, it must be a society that is for the unification of Africa. Kwame Nkrumah used to say that the independence of Ghana is useless except it is linked to the overall continental unification and liberation of Africa. So we must understand that our individual countries, whatever success we get from these individual countries, if it does not lead to Africa's liberation, it is useless.
Earlier you said you are not an African because you were born in Africa, but because Africa was born. Can you explain that better?
Yeah. We must first and foremost understand that we all have a collective responsibility towards the liberation of Africa and our continental unification. Now, when we say Africa was born in us, and we are not Africans because we were born in Africa, it simply talks about the collective responsibility that we as motherland people have to in connection with the liberation of Africa. Now, what do I mean? We as motherland people are one of the peoples in this world that are very confused about our ideology and our identity as a people. We don't have a collective ideology. We don't have a collective identity. When you ask black people all over the world, what are you? They say, I am Afro, this one, I am Afro Brazilian, I'm Afro Trinidadian, I'm Afro whatever. I am, some people even tell you they are already and all that. Some people will tell you they are whatever, black, Negro, nigger, whatever, what have you. But most people do not tell that they are African people. So we limited being African to just being on the continent of Africa. So when we mean I'm an African, not because I was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in me, it simply means that the collective ideology and the consciousness of Africa for our development on a universal basis is in the consciousness of the African mind. Now, many people who are not on the continent are more aware of their Africanness than Africans who are on the continent. Let me give an example. Marcus Garvey did not step 1 square meters of the African continent, but he preached about Africa more than many Africans, or was even more aware of Africa more than many Africans who are living on the continent.
That's because he had a lot of struggles on his part than we do, so we do not face the kind of struggles he faced at this time.
Well, even those period where Marcus Garvey was alive, Africa was still under colonialism. To pass the African road, you have to wait for a white man to pass on our continent, where we had the separation between the island and the mainland, where the Europeans were on the island, we African people were on the mainland. When we see them, we dodge, when we live in the boys' quarters of their house, and all of this. So we must understand that Africa is about collective responsibility. Now, during the colonial struggle, the Africans that were not on the continent applied pressure on the colonial masters for them to engage in intellectual conversations for African liberation. That's why we had the first Pan-African Congress, second Pan-African Congress, the fifth Pan-African Congress in Manchester. We had the Baghdad Conference. These are conferences that were done by Africans who were not on the continent. And black people were not on the continent because they served as the ideological guide for Africans. So what I'm saying is that being an African is not by just living on the African continent, but also by understanding that Africa ideologically is wherever African people or black people, as the case may be, are on the continent, or are on the universe. Wherever African people are on the universe is Africa. So if I go into England, I understand that my collective responsibility as an African person is to locate the African communities in England and to begin to work for their emancipation, same as other states, whether in Asia, in Europe, in Latin America, in wherever African people are, is Africa. So we must understand that collective responsibility that we have toward one another, that we have a collective responsibility, a collective struggle. Malcolm X said that there will come a time where African people will come together. And when you touch one black man, you have touched all black people. If a white man comes into Nigeria and is unjustly treated, all white people all over the world will come together and fight for that white man. But Africans, and Africa was killed in Europe and in America. And all African people on the continent just they don't see it because they don't see him as an African person.
They do not identify with other Africans.
Yes, as Africa. So we call them Akata, we call them whatever, we call them names. You understand? So we must understand that Africa is beyond. Look at Cuba. Look at Brazil. We have local people. We have people who speak Yoruba, who bear Yoruba names. Not just Yoruba. We have Twi, we have Ashanti, We have vast grades of African people spread over the world by migration, by the transatlantic slave trade, by whatever. These people too are African people, so they must understand their responsibility in the African revolution. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So that must be our, like, okay, Kwame Ture, Sokleka Michael. Sokleka Michael left North America and came back to Africa. He was not born here. He was born in Trinidad and Tobago, grew up all his life in the US, but came back to Africa to organize. Why? Because he understood this collective responsibility. So we must begin to see Africans and we ourselves as Africans beyond these borderlines, beyond the continent itself, but as a universal struggle, which would also lead to the international liberation of humanity in itself. Yeah.
True. That's a lot. Myself, I have to go back and listen. I have to go back and listen to juice out all of the things you've said, because you've said a whole lot of things. When an African gets to another continent, another country, you should know that that place has become Africa, and you should identify with other Africans that are there, so that you can help in solving the problems they are facing. So that, because if you not help them to solve the problem, you also face the problem.
Exactly. And your children. But for example, like if you intend on staying in a particular society, let's say you migrate from Africa, then you stay in a particular society, those children you are seeing in that community are your children tomorrow.
They are what your children would look like.
Exactly.
So in view of that, this is the major reason I started the John Patrick Leadership Academy, to educate you and I on what it means to be a Nigerian, what it means to be an African, and what we can do individually and collectively to ensure that our dear continent becomes the great continent that it is. We all know that Africa is a great continent. It's said that the resources in Africa can make Africa a world power. The resources in Nigeria alone is enough to make Nigeria a world power.
I like to say, by the total estimation of Africa's wealth, every African ought to be a millionaire. Not just Africans on the continent, but Africa on the universal base. So why are we poor?
I think that's the topic for next episode. It sounds very nice, no? Why are we poor? Africans, why are we poor? So thank you for watching up to this extent. If you are the first time subscriber, I want you to please subscribe, like, and share, so that you've learned something. For you to watch up to this extent, you've learned something, and I'm sure there's someone in your cycle that needs to learn the same thing you've learned. So please share to those in your cycle so that they can learn, and so that we can keep giving you contents like this. You don't need to just watch contents for entertainment, but for educational purposes. And that's why we have the John Patrick channel, and we also have the John Patrick Leadership Academy to train Nigerians to become leaders, not just Nigerians or not just Africans, but those that will help us achieve the Africans of our dreams. Thank you very much for coming.
I appreciate it.
And of being of value to our audience. Cheers, and see you in the next episode.
See you in the next episode, Africa.